Hey, 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 live from Denver. It's Friday night. Welcome to Critical Conversations, the weekly show where I, and often, although I'm sorry again, not this week, my wife, Melissa, would be joining me, but you get me. So here I am. She's taking the night off, and that's what we're doing. And she really does look forward to coming back next week. And I know pretty soon I'm going to need to present proof of life videos or something, or holding up a newspaper or something. But for now, she's just taking the night off, and we're going to let her do that. So we got stuff to talk about. We got interesting things. In fact, I don't know. I kind of set you guys up a little bit on this. There's a little bit of clickbait going on here tonight with this. Not necessarily purposefully, but just in sort of how things rolled out. But we'll have fun with it anyway. And so welcome to the show, and thanks for coming around and watching everybody come on board here. I see all the usual critics and suspects in the comments, and I always, by the way, do pass on your messages to her. She knows that you guys absolutely love her and want her to be here, and she wants to be here too. Just sometimes circumstances don't allow for that. However, we do have, and I'm funny how as time goes on here with this, it's also funny how I've graduated from Post-it notes now to full-blown papers, and I'm concerned that if I ever start getting big binder clips of papers here or anything, start looking like Alex Jones, somebody should definitely stop me before that happens. I don't ever want to look like that old, crazy white guy who's surrounded by all these papers and he's just reading all this horrible news all day long. I don't ever want to devolve into that in my live streams. All right. Yes. Let's see everybody here. Oh yes. Wonderful. Juliana's keeps using me, the special membership icons I created for you guys. When you're members, you have a Xenu and a critical thinking, and I think one other little, what do I call it? Icons, just a little avatar or whatever. Okay, so yeah, we won't go there. Yeah, there's Xenu. There he is. No Scientology. Okay, so what should we talk about? Well, first, as we're bringing in the show and everybody's coming on board, let's go ahead and click on to our weekly Snuggles, Not Struggles cam. There is our little bundle of furry joy, very much alive and kicking there. This was actually taken within the last hour in our living room. And he's just having a good old time there on our rug. This is Benson in native mode, in natural mode here, where he just kind of kicks it on that rug. Often, if he's not on the couch, he's hanging out over here because he's got this great big bed there, and he just he's scratching his ear and messing around. We actually had some video footage of him out at a swimming pool that I really wanted to show you guys, but we were not able to do that because the video had other people in it that we didn't want to put up on public display for everybody. But he looks so cute riding around on this little surfboard kind of thing. But here he is, just there he is right there. Yeah, loving life. Snuggles, not struggles. There we go. All right. So, yes. Thank you, guys. Let me see what we got here. Yes. Very good. Okay. Hey, Alex. Glad to see you're in the chat there as well. Awesome. Oh, you like the rug. Thank you. Yeah, it's a Walmart special. Okay. I actually had a couple topics to discuss tonight. I was all set. Let me tell you how my afternoon went today, because I'll tell you about the podcast later in the show, but you guys have a 2-hour awesome podcast coming tomorrow. And while I was editing that, I was messaged by somebody like, hey, have you seen this video that Amy Scobee posted? And I was like, no, I have not, because I don't make a lot of time to go watch other channels and keep up and everything. I'm too busy doing my own thing. I was literally in the middle of editing my podcast. And so I went over there, and she posted this video about how there was this leak and this dispatch, this communication Okay, let's go ahead and I guess we'll just, let's just go ahead and dive into this. And somebody was asking last week, I got on a real roll last week about Leah Remini's lawsuit. And I know at least one person was in the comments like, hey, isn't this a call-in show? Yes, it is. And the calls come later in the show. And I do have it tuned in, ready to go on that. I see somebody already has called in, which is awesome. And we will get to those, but the way the show is patterned now is I'm not taking calls all hour. I've got a couple things to go over with you guys. We're going to walk through this document thing, and then we'll start taking phone calls. Okay, so be patient with me on that line. And by the way, I wanted to say you guys are super nice, so complimentary, and have such kind words for me. I was on Court TV yesterday. The opportunity literally landed in my lap. It was not, it was sort of a recommendation. And so I got on there. I didn't see that coming yesterday. I had a lot of stuff happen yesterday. I did, I think, 2 back-to-back podcast recordings, which is not usually I'll do like 1 in a day. I think I did 2 yesterday. And so I was already a little tired. And then Court TV, hey, how'd you like to do this? Yeah, of course I'd like to do that. Yeah, this guy, Vinny Palatino or whatever, this guy on Court TV, I've heard his name, but I don't watch Court TV or pay much attention to it. But apparently a lot of people do, and they do really good coverage. And actually, I have seen the show and have seen some of their coverage on earlier trials. So I thought, well, hell, here's an opportunity to talk about Scientology. Yeah, Politon, that's right. So why don't I... Sure, I'll go for it. As far as I knew, I was the only one. I didn't know Claire and Tony were also being featured on it. Had I known that, I would have been a little bit more in the loop. All I knew about was myself. And it was really interesting sitting over in my chair over there on my webcam. And I thought microphone, I thought it was echoey. And I thought after it was all done, I went, oh my God, all I did was talk about myself. Jesus, this was about Leah's lawsuit. But I was so nervous while we were talking that I just kind of answered his questions as we were going, and I didn't really think through. Now, as I think I posted this on Facebook, I was like, now I understand why people go into these things ready with their talking points so they can make sure they hit those points. And I didn't really think that at all. I was just so into the moment of it. But thank you guys. I really appreciate your kind words on that. Did my best off the cuff to give good answers, and I'm glad that came across well. I just, next time I'm using this microphone. Okay. So let's go ahead and, yeah, exactly. It was a little echoey, but no problem. All right. So let's talk about this post today from Amy. Now, I do not want, okay, first we're going to get into the meat of it, and then I'm going to turn everything 180 degrees on you guys, okay? And you know it's coming, so of course. The post, Amy made a post, and nothing I'm going to say here today is any kind of hit or pushback or anything like that on personalities here. This is just here's what happened. Is she posted about this leak, and it was a dispatch, eyes only, for December 1983. This is an old document sent to COCMO Int, who apparently would have been Mark Yeager at the time. He's one of these people who's languishing up in the hole. Languishing. He's up there, suffering along with all the other Sea Org veteran execs who helped put David Miscavige in place. Their thanks for that is a life of torture and torment at the hands of David Miscavige. And in this dispatch, it appears that he is ripping Mark's face. It says, Mark, God damn it, listen to me, you indoctrinated fucking pea brain. I mean, blah, 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 right? It just goes on and on and on into this. And talking about how there is a problem because they need to present this, they need to deal with the David Miscavige problem. It's called Re-Smash Squirrels Project. This was an effort by the Church of Scientology to do away with and get rid of David Miscavige's Advanced Ability Center, the AAC. This was a hot and going topic in Santa Barbara, California, Montecito, I believe, actually. Oh, thank you for that super chat, Robbie. Appreciate that. this AAC was a going concern when I first got online, started doing services in Santa Barbara in 1985. They were going, and it was a big deal in the church, in the organization. It was only talked about in sort of hushed ways. You didn't really, talk openly and have big long conversations about this because it was en theta, and you don't talk en theta when you're in the church. But there had been a schism, and there had been a lot of people who had gone over to this other group, and it was this great big flap, and there were Sea Org staff command team in Santa Barbara at the church there. When I joined staff, the ED was a Sea Org member, and the senior CS was a Sea Org member. And she yelled and screamed at everybody. It was not a pleasant environment, but I joined staff anyway. But when I first got on services there as a 15-year-old, I was just doing classes. The course room was right next to the executive director's office. Like there was some drywall between us, and she'd be ripping staff members' faces off for their low statistics, yelling at the top of her lungs, while we're literally right across the hall trying to study L. Ron Hubbard, learning about how theta we're supposed to be and how uptone and happy we're supposed to be, while the leader of the organization is over there destroying her staff daily. Right? This would go on. I always used to wonder about that. I always thought that was the craziest thing. But it was easy to say, well, that's just her. It's not all of Scientology. She's not representative of all of Scientology, right? But I digress. And Dylan, the reason I wasn't on this is because I was setting things up for the first time on my desktop with links and my phone and stuff, and it was a little confusing. So that's why I didn't bring it all over here, because it's an additional setup here with other variables, and I didn't want to have those in the way for my first time on doing it. So that's why. Okay, so thank you. So this problem was a very real problem in the 1980s in Scientology. And David Miscavige very definitely had it on his plate to deal with this problem, because it was only the schism of Scientology. I mean, quite literally, this was one of those points where Scientology could have ended. Really wish it had. It didn't. Thanks for the other super chat. Excellent. But this dispatch apparently was... what they're saying here is, there's a translation where it appears that David Miscavige is ordering, if we don't get something hot, okay, he's talking about responding to this threat from David Mayo, and David Mayo had been the highest technical staff member in all of Scientology. He was the senior case supervisor, international, top dog. Hubbard had been grooming him and setting him up to be his technical successor. There was actually a plan and apparently written orders, if we're to believe David Mayo and other people who were around at that time. But then Mayo got squashed, right? Miscavige didn't like him, and bad information was given to Hubbard, and Hubbard was already paranoid and insane. And so he was more than happy to turn on David Mayo and ruin him utterly, put him under fair game, all that. And Mayo went off as a response to that and started this new Scientology Center. And they were trying to deal with it because a lot of Scientologists were going there. Miscavige is saying the RTC missionaires went nowhere on handling the squirrels, and the longer you guys Q&A, in other words, mess around, not get the job done, the more people are getting on Mayo's lines, in other words, joining up at the AAC, minute by minute, by the minute. If we don't get something hot out of this month, everyone will be at the fucking AAC, Miscavige is saying. Knock off the BS about doing an LRH cassette. Nobody falls for them. Since XXXX, I don't care how good the actor is or how much Horwich worked it over with the Fairlight, a cassette just won't cut it. So there's an implication here that there have already been false, deep fake. Okay, let's use that term, deep fake cassettes of L. Ron Hubbard made and distributed to Scientologists. And now he's saying that those cassettes aren't going to cut it. First, far too many people said last year's didn't sound like the old man. And it didn't, by the way. I remember the lectures they're talking about. These were public released cassettes from L. Ron Hubbard, supposedly, talking about income and statistics and the growth of Scientology in 1982 or 3, and how, it had been the greatest year ever for expansion, blah, blah, blah. But L. Ron Hubbard sounded very odd in those briefings. His voice just sounded different, and if you listen to him or dig him up, you'll see what I'm talking about. So they're saying in this dispatch, the idea here is that those weren't good enough. And if they said it, he's saying, it didn't sound like the old man. And if they said it, how many do you suppose thought it wasn't him? Too goddamn many. Second, I don't care how good the actor is. Some asshole gets the idea of a voice print and we're fucked. It's got to be a video, and I don't care how long these guys have been up. They work around the fucking clock until it's done. So there's all this, Miscavige swearing and all that. Third, too many public think he's dead or ill or of the lines, and only a video will convince them otherwise. There are typos in this that are indicative to me that this is already a problem. Because the people who type up Miscavige's stuff, and at this point in 1983 as special ops, I'm pretty sure he wasn't typing his own dispatches, but if he was, I don't think he'd be this sloppy about it. But we'll get to that. Now, 4 public are going to the AAC in droves, and that bastard, blah, 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 was missing stats all over the world. So he seems to be ordering here. Then he gives a list of 5 things that he wants done. Get the old video clips of the old man. Use ones where his lips aren't facing the screen, looking away or looking up and down, or you'll never PLS it. Throw in some footage of him yelling, blah, blah, blah. So there's instructions here, apparently, to Mark Yeager. I want a deep fake of L. Ron Hubbard, that we can show people, and we're going to get this out. Well, here's the thing about this dispatch, okay? Sounds amazing. Sounds like, oh my God, that sounds like David Miscavige. That looks like David Miscavige. That feels like David Miscavige. It must be David Miscavige. This must be legitimate. This is crazy. Here we have Scientology, the leader of Scientology before Hubbard's even dead, ordering deep fakes of Hubbard on cassette, audio, and then with video. Who knows? What could this mean? If this is true, could this mean that David Miscavige has been lining up people for years now, making deep fakes of L. Ron Hubbard and putting them out to the public? Okay. So that's the claim, basically. That's the idea that is here, that is presented with this. And this was the claim that seemed to be being made in Amy's video. So based on this dispatch, based on this leak, okay, it's a data point, right? It's something you can think with. But is it real? Well, apparently not. And the reason that the things that we can point to say, wait a second, are numerous typographic errors in this thing. Like it's not well put together. It's not well constructed. And maybe I'm not privy to David Miscavige. In fact, I'm not privy to David Miscavige's unedited, unfiltered communications. My experience with David Miscavige and having dispatched communications with him or seeing him speak in public did not include this kind of language. This was the kind of thing he reserved, we're told, for private meetings, inner circle stuff, management stuff, like when he was at the gold base or when he's in a space where there's no cameras around, no public around, and he can just rip into somebody, he'll be more than happy to. But otherwise, he presents this very different, stage-mannered, very pressed and puffed up image. So this dispatch does seem questionable to me just on those grammatical and spelling and typographical errors, and they are rife throughout this. But then there's more. So there was a very famous case of Larry Wallersheim suing the Church of Scientology, and this went on for many years, many depositions, many court filings, many back and forths. It would be boxes of of paperwork if I were, it's reams and reams, tear down half a forest in order to print out all the filings and everything having to do with the Wallersheim case. But we can pull this bit out of it, which is directly addressing this issue from 1999. We'll get there, JR. We'll get there. This would all be, of course, very conjectural, right? Random thought. In 10 years, and deep fakes are a thing, will Scientology schism because of rival factions with fakes? Absolutely, that could happen. But if you're going to talk about making fakes about L. Ron Hubbard, let me say a little bit more before I read this to you. There are people in Scientology, not just David Miscavige, who are privy to, exposed to, have access to the full library, or a great chunk of the full library of L. Ron Hubbard's works. All the tape masters, the lecture masters, right? All the original handwritten documents, all the original typed up documents. They've got all that stuff. I mean, it's impressive, actually. They really did keep everything they could get their hands on, and anything they didn't already have, they sent Sea Org missionaries around in the 1980s and 90s constantly to go through every single nook and cranny of everywhere to find every single handwritten note or document or anything that Hubbard had put his scrawl on. And they found a lot of stuff. There were missions going around that found boxes and boxes of what were called L. Ron Hubbard originals. That's how they refer to them in the churches. This is an L. Ron Hubbard original. It's like, if you're holding an L. Ron Hubbard original, it's like, you got to be really super careful with it. And you send it to L. Ron Hubbard archives. You don't keep it. And we found hundreds of pieces of paper with L. Ron Hubbard's writing on them in pre-clear folders in PAC in Los Angeles. And this is how I'm just trying to give an idea to you of how seriously they take this subject in the world of Scientology. Even me, as a low middle level manager or service org staff member, was hyper aware of the importance of L. Ron Hubbard originals. And if you found anything that had his writing on it, and it was the original thing, not a copy, you were tasked with making a copy of it, putting that copy where it was, and sending that original on up to L. Ron Hubbard archives. They wanted everything. And as far as I know, they got a lot of stuff, and they catalog this, index it, file it. They've scanned it. I mean, they've got all kinds of technology that they have been utilizing for years, real, computer tech, digitizing everything. In other words, they take this stuff seriously. I want you guys to know that this is not the one thing I'm absolutely positive of, because of all my years of experience in dealing with or running up against L. Ron Hubbard archives or working with any kind of originals of L. Ron Hubbard stuff, is there's almost like a chain of evidence that goes with all of these documents. Like, once they get these things, they file them, index them, document them, etc. And changing these things or going in and just getting rid of stuff, people would know. And, people will give Miscavige a lot, but when it comes to L. Ron Hubbard originals, nobody in Scientology that I could think of would tolerate David Miscavige altering or messing around with those originals. And according to what I've been told by Mitch Brisker and other people from international management who worked right up with David Miscavige during all of this, they would tell you that he is actually kind of careful to be like, hey, I am not source. I'm not L. Ron Hubbard. Apparently, this is something he does. I've never seen him do it, but apparently that's the case. I'm told, Xion, that even copies, a binder of Excalibur, the actual original work, I'm told they got copies of it up there. Never been able to find a copy of it anywhere else, but I'm told they have copies of it up there. So, I just wanted to kind of get across my experience of the flavor of how Scientology as an institution deals with L. Ron Hubbard's materials. So would it be just a matter of an order for David Miscavige to tell another dedicated, hardcore, extreme Scientologist, especially in 1983, when Hubbard was still alive, I order you to go make a deep fake of L. Ron Hubbard, right? I mean, he'd have to be so powerful that they would do that even before he'd taken over the entire operation and L. Ron Hubbard was no longer a factor. That was still 3 years away when this dispatch supposedly was written. So, in the Wallersheim case, David Miscavige was put under oath, and he was depositioned. He was deposed. These are two of the pages of the very long document of his deposition. This was on October 15th, 1999. He is put under oath. He's over 18, blah, blah, blah. Been the chairman of the board of the directors of Religious Technology Center, blah, blah, blah. So we know this is David Miscavige, and we know it's our David Miscavige. So, point 76 of his affidavit, and let me just give you this as another data point, because that's how I regard this, is just a data point. I'm not giving you this and telling you what to think about it. But here's what it says. The resultant attempts to harass me, this is Miscavige talking, to harass me in litigation extended to not just creating false allegations, but false documents as well. In 1984, a former church staff member, then employed by one of those splinter groups, created a document entitled Smash Squirrels Project. That's this document. This forged document, allegedly written by me, purported to show that the taped message by Mr. Hubbard denouncing their movement was actually created by me through use of a digital sampling device. Putting aside that lie, no digital sampling device was or is to this day capable of accomplishing such a task. Let's remember again, this is 1999. Moreover, the digital device referred to and by which I allegedly accomplished this impersonation of Mr. Hubbard's voice was an early generation musical instrument capable of replicating a short sample of natural sounds for use in playing music. This also, by the way, happens to be a device I have personal knowledge that L. Ron Hubbard referred to and utilized in creating the soundtrack for Man the Unfathomable, awful movie that Hubbard directed using only natural light and natural sounds, which he had programmed into this sort of MIDI, early development of a MIDI recorder. Notwithstanding the absurdity of the allegation, the ramifications of this forgery had a severe impact on me. It implied I intended some form of harassment of apostate Scientologists, colloquially called squirrels in Scientology. The document was widely circulated to Scientologists and to the government in an attempt to discredit me. It was also circulated by civil litigants and continuously used against me in litigation. I had to fight this issue for years. Now, this is just Miscavige talking so far. Not very credible. We already know David Miscavige will lie. Will he lie under oath? Sure he will. Of course he will. It's his nature. But there's more. I had to fight this issue for years until the document was examined in 1993 in a Freedom of Information Act case, Miscavige versus IRS. Number CV887341TJH, CD Cal by Special Master Jack Tanner, who found that it was, in fact, a forgery. So I went and Googled Special Master Jack Tanner. Sure enough, real guy. I believe he has died since this time. He was a federal judge, and he was appointed to be Special Master of different cases. We'll get into that Special Master thing in a second. And Jack Tanner here apparently found it was a forgery. That conclusion was affirmed in an order issued by Judge Terry J. Hatter of the United States District Court for the Central District of California, XE Order of Judge Hatter. So the deposition, of course, included reference to that. So, Is Miscavige lying? Well, he points out the names of two people, Tenor and Terry J. Hatter, who I also Googled and looked up, and also is a federal judge. So, appears beyond David Miscavige's claims, which I would never take as evidence of almost anything, but backed up by court order and by special master. And a special master, by the way, is someone who is generally a subordinate official appointed by a judge to ensure judicial orders are followed, or in the alternative, to hear evidence on behalf of the judge and make recommendations to the judge as to the disposition of a matter. So it's a completely independent body selected by the judge, not by Scientology, in order to determine a question that is not going to be determined during the case itself by the judge or the court. And so the special master goes, checks it out, comes back. And the special master said, yeah, no, this is not a real document. It was not really written by David Miscavige. I don't know what his standard of evidence is. I did not get that deep into this. This is as far as I went. And I thought, well, I can't believe that this document is real now. There is no way, shape, or form that I can give it any credibility whatsoever after it's already been ruled on in such a way. Not because David Miscavige said it isn't real, but because it was proved to not be real in court. So as much fun as it might have been to believe that this was true, and my mind was racing when I first found this out, all the way up until I told my friend Tony about it, Tony Ortega, the journalist. I said, hey, Tony, check out this video, check out this document. What's this about? I think there might be something here. And he said, oh, and he went and found these documents for me, because these are buried in old ARS postings and in a Free Zone website, which I've never visited. I don't go, to those sites particularly, because if it's independent Scientology, I'm not necessarily interested in it. I had no idea they had this kind of stuff there. Now I know about these sites. There'll be more places for me to find more information or cross-check and fact-check information as it comes up. So isn't it funny that this whole matter that's been brought up now today on YouTube, and which looks like totally legit, I am absolutely positive. There's a bunch of people in the comments on that channel right now going, oh my God, look at all these. There's probably all of it's deep faked, rah, 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 making all these, conclusions from this. Or perhaps other people are aware that this has already been debunked and are making that case too. I honestly, I didn't go check it out. But I thought this would be an opportunity to present you guys with this, something that you kind of want to be true, something you kind of really are biased in the direction of like, yeah, that sounds legit. I could completely believe that. I'm going to overlook all the errors and problems with this document because I want it to be true, because wouldn't it be amazing if David Miscavige was actually faking L. Ron Hubbard's voice or likeness? The other point of evidence is a bit of a negative on this. It doesn't prove anything, but it is an interesting cross-check. Is not one person has ever come out of Scientology of any prominence from that level and declared that that was ever done. Mark Headley and Mark Headley independently has spoken at great length about how the editing of L. Ron Hubbard's lectures will remove discreditable, racist, bigoted, sort of commentary to give Hubbard the best possible interpretation and the best possible look, and remove all that nasty stuff, or remove any references to suppressive people or anything like that. They edit them, but they don't create them out of whole cloth. He never, as far as I know, made such a claim. No one has until this, or except for the fact, of course, that somebody else was making that claim back in the 90s, back in the 80s, when this was hounding Miscavige. So I find that very, very interesting, right? How these things just kind of come and they go, and they come and they go. And this is one of the things, this is one of those lessons in critical thinking that we need to be very, very careful of. Critical thinking is not about not getting fooled. It's about accepting and looking for and finding counter evidence and then not denying it when it's right in your face. And so as much as I might personally even have wanted to believe this was true, once these other facts were pointed out about it, and once I saw the filings and all the typographical errors and other nonsense in this, I was like, oh, come on, this is crazy. There's no way. And that's when you have that moment and go, yep, good job, right? So something to pay attention to, because in the future, I can guarantee you more of this kind of stuff is going to come up. It always does, right? There's a cyclic aspect to fake news or false information. It kind of keeps coming around because then it gets debunked, people move on, and some new person comes along, or some person who wasn't any part of that earlier trajectory comes along. Look what I found, right? And everybody goes crazy, and then the whole cycle of debunking, it has to happen again and again, and a few years later, again. And this is just the nature of how these things kind of work, is they hardly any of this stuff, misinformation stuff, hardly any of this stuff ever gets buried for good, gets buried finally, and we're never, ever, ever going to have to talk about this again. Nah, it just keeps coming around. So no harm, no foul. Like I said, this is no hit on anybody. Everybody's susceptible to falling for nonsense. The thing about it is, do you do your research, and do you dig in, and do you try to debunk your own ideas before you present them? That's the test, right? And if you fail at that, no biggie. But what do you do next time, right? You do better. Or, right? This is how I try to run, stuff. I'm far from perfect at it. And the one time I really, really got it wrong, I pulled down a whole podcast one time because of that. Again, not presenting myself in any contrast to anybody else, just pointing out how I think this would go, or how I think these kind of things should go, is you check your facts, especially falling back to that old mantra, that old saw from Carl Sagan, right? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. We always need to keep that in mind, especially when we are so biased to want to believe the worst. And I see it throughout the community all the time, right? Scientology's already, as I've said before, so bad. You really don't have to make things up to make it worse. But people in history clearly have, and you can see why. But the truth is bad enough as it is, and we can just stick with that and roll with it. Okay, yeah, exactly. Like a zombie, it never dies. In fact, one of my Patreon supporters actually called these kind of things like zombie ideas. And like in history, years ago, I actually did a whole podcast on that. So good call there, X-Sign. I think that's absolutely true. Yeah, I'll bet that's true. But that's true, JR. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I do have a whole other thing, but I think maybe we'll see if we get into this, or we save it for another show. But I'm putting on the headphones, so let's see if we can pick up this call here. Hello, is this Thomas?
Hello.
Oh, Henny.
This is Henny.
Oh my God, I'm such a fool. I didn't see it was you. My bad.
Chris. Listen, it's okay. I'm used to it, okay? I love you anyway, and I know you know who I am once you hear my voice. Hello, and hello to everybody else, and I hope Melissa is well, and recuperating well, and I want to scream, but I'm trying to keep myself cool, okay? Right. I'm with my granddaughter. Okay, and my son. Thank you. I'm having a wonderful time. And last night we all, hung out and we watched TV. Everybody went to bed, and I turned on the phone. It was like 2 a.m, and there was Court TV, which I have been watching for years. Okay, and there's Vinnie Politan talking about Scientology, and I was like, oh, he's not getting it. He's really not getting it. And then he introduces you. Well, I had to do everything I could to stop myself from screaming. And I'm going to tell you why. Yeah. Because this is where you belong. Okay?
Thank you.
I really mean it. It started with Tony Ortega and the two of you, okay, really giving information and facts regarding Scientology and in a very journalistic way. And this is where your expertise, okay, falls into place. Anybody else can have a podcast, and I appreciate everybody, believe me. But I know what you've given and how long you've given it. And you finally, I was so happy. I was like, oh, here he is. And you really explained yourself, and you explained to him, because I think he had an idea, but he didn't really understand the severity of this cult.
That's right. I agree.
And once you laid it out perfectly, I can't tell you how proud I am of you. Okay? Really.
Thank you.
You were dynamite. It was on point. You explained everything. You know, he really didn't get like he was thinking more of donations, which this is not a donation. This is you give it or you are, throw.
Right.
It's a totally different thing, and you explained it magnificently. And I wanted to applaud you. And this is going to be the platform for you, because you are an expert in this field, and they need, courts, court TV, courts in general, the judicial system. Everyone needs to understand what the hell is going on, and you, my dear, are the one to explain it. And I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
I really, really am.
Thank you.
You really made my night. Oh, okay. So I really mean it, Chris. I'm so excited. Now, I just wanted to say that a long time ago, I learned that there was, I guess it was like a pamphlet or something, that L. Ron Hubbard, I call him Lafayette, because that's his name, and I'm sure he hated it. He put down on paper who he wanted to take over after he was gone. Do you remember those? And it was one woman, and it was another. I can't remember who it was.
Are you referring to Pat Nanny Broker?
Yes, I am.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay. And what happened was there was a man. He's a very nice man. He's a very nice man. They took such advantage of him because they could. And he was given that paper to pass around, which he did. And when Lafayette died, David Miscavige had him destroy all the copies of that paperwork. Mm-hmm. But he read it. He read it before he destroyed it. And he may even have a copy of it. Who knows? Left somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. Actually, let me fill in a couple blanks for you on this, because I have personal experience with this.
Okay.
If it's what I'm thinking about, if we're talking about the issue with Pat Nanny Broker named as Hubbard's successors, that issue was actually sent. It was printed and distributed to all the churches.
Okay.
I saw it in Santa Barbara when I was a public person, before I even joined staff, on the notice board right after Hubbard died. I was attending courses at that time. And I thought, I don't know who these people are. It was a Sea Org issue, which I had very little experience with. But I remember it clear as day, because I read it and I went, well, I don't know who they are, but they sound like cool people. Hubbard's calling them loyal officers. That must be awesome. And then I went home, and I came back into course like 2 days later, and on the notice board, not only was it gone, but there was another issue from David Miscavige. First time I think I ever read the guy's name, actually, because this is 1986. And it said, this is a forgery. This is nonsense. They tried to make a power grab. We stopped them. Hip, hip, hooray for L. Ron Hubbard. And that's how so it was in and it was gone. And that's what I remember of that episode back from then. And then Miscavige was in charge from that point forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly when it started. When he started to take over and make up these rules. And I'm not saying that Lafayette was any great man. He wasn't. He was an abuser of children. He was an abuser of women. He was an abuser of everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And he was horrible. Horrible. Okay? And it wasn't only him, because there were other people who watched him do these things.
Yep.
And didn't interfere or protect the children or do anything that they should have done.
That's right.
And I really feel that they're as much to blame in the culpability of what it has now become. Okay? And, yes, as well as him. But I just wanted to mention that I never forgot about that.
Absolutely. Okay?
And I knew that David Miscavige was going to do whatever the fuck he wanted to do by eliminating that document.
Absolutely. No, he needed to.
And that's what he did.
That was right in the middle of his entire coup and takeover. That's when all that went down. And that was one part of a whole thing that happened, including guns and marching on RTC offices. And Jesse Prince did a whole breakdown of it. There was armed resistance. It was insane what was going on in Scientology in 1986. That was probably one of the wildest years in Scientology.
Really?
Oh, well, Hubbard died in January, and then by the end of the year, Miscavige is in charge. Who knows all the things that happened in between there? Miscavige knows. Shelley knows. Mike and Marty know a little bit. They don't know everything. Jesse knows what he knows. But, Miscavige and Shelley are pretty much, I think, the only ones who know everything that went down then. At least who are still around to talk about it, I suppose.
Yes. Well, all of those people, like you said, you didn't know who Pat and Annie Broca, is that right?
That's right. Never heard of them.
Were?
Okay. When I read that issue, that was the first time I'd ever heard their names. Well,
David made sure that he eliminated everybody.
Exactly.
Now, everybody wants to call it disappeared. Okay? I don't call it disappeared. I call it eliminated.
Yeah.
And you take that any way you like.
Absolutely.
Okay? Because there is no way that any of those people are ever going to be seen again. I'm sorry to say. And I wanted to also just say, I give Leah a lot of credit. I know that this is not easy. It's not going to be easy. It hasn't been easy, and she's got some road ahead of her. And I appreciate the fact that she is doing what she's doing. I really do. Wow. Because I know it's not easy. But I can't think of anyone else who could actually stand up to this with authority and with, you know what I mean? Now there's so much backing. She's not by herself. She has practically half the cult backing her.
Yep.
Am I wrong?
No.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I know it's going to take a long time. I know it is, but I back her and I support everyone. And I wish that I'm glad that she has this suit against them. And I know it's not about money. It's more about eliminating their abuse.
Exactly.
Because treating children that way and screwing with people's mind, I'm sorry. They call it auditing. I call it fucking brainwashing, okay?
I get it.
And you can... No, really, that's what it is. And
you're right.
You want to call it a fucking e-meter? It's not an e-meter, okay? It's whatever it is, it doesn't work, okay? We know it doesn't work.
That's right.
So, it's just insanity that needs to come to an end. And I hope it's on its knees, all of them. And that's what I wanted to say. And I adore you. I'm so proud of you again. You really, you were terrific last night. And I'm so glad that now it's finally coming to fruition the way it's supposed to.
Exactly.
And I know it's going to take a while, but it's all right. It's all right.
Excellent.
The can has been kicked, and once you kick that can, it ain't stopping. So I adore you. I adore all the critics and supporters and people who have really stuck behind each other, and I will also continue to do so.
Thanks, Henny.
Okay, so
right.
Thank you, Chris.
Bye-bye.
I appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Good night, honey.
All right. Cool. Okay, we're in the last 10 minutes. I'm going to take my headphones off. If another call comes in the next 2 minutes, I might take it. But otherwise, we're going to move towards starting the wrap-up start of the show. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about this week, which was my new show. I decided I had been planning this for quite some time, and I dropped hints about it, talked about it with some Patreon people, and then I was going to get started on it after I was done with the tone scale and the metering videos, which I'm still working on. And instead, I thought, okay, let's just do it. Let's just get going. And so this week on Wednesday, and you saw it drop publicly for everybody on Thursday, I started a new show. It's going to be every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, and it's going to be live for members of Patreon and YouTube. You're the ones who get to connect live on it. And then 24 hours later, I will post it publicly for everybody so that all my content is out there for everybody to consume. But I wanted to finally do something to at least acknowledge or give something to those who are supporting this show special, because nobody's really ever asked me for anything special. People sign up and support my show just out of the kindness of their heart and because they want to support what I'm doing. And I absolutely, positively love the fact that I'm actually pulling this off and able to continue doing this work because of that support. But I thought, okay, well, I gotta, I've offered various things on some of the Patreon tiers and all that, but I wanted to do something a little bit more, and so that's what this show is about. And it's also a news show about cults. It's 3 to 5 stories. I'm guesstimating we did 3 for the first episode on different cults, different coercive control situations around the world that I'm spotting that are in the news that I want to talk about or comment on. And it's about a half-hour show, right? I think it took about 25 minutes to go through it. It's scripted. I'm actually reading from a script because I want to get all the facts and figures proper and right, and I think that's how news should be done. So, at least in that format, so that's how that goes, but I'm doing it live so you guys can be part of the process and that kind of thing. So I hope you guys will, I hope this will encourage some memberships, but more importantly, I hope it'll encourage you to check out the show. The first episode was I'm not super happy with the graphic layout. Hasn't bothered a lot of people so far, which I'm very happy about, but it will definitely be a little bit of a different layout this next week, a little bit more polished. That was everything you saw on it was the product of 2 days of work while I was getting everything else kind of done and doing interviews and other things around that. So it's been pretty hectic here for the last week or two on my part. I've been really just balls out on stuff. And it's been great to keep busy, but it's been a little tiring too. There's been a lot happening. So I hope, excellent. I'm really glad you guys liked that show, and there will be more of that, and it'll be exactly that kind of tone, but I am looking for feedback and comments and all that on that. So go ahead and don't be shy about that. This is kind of funny. I asked... I think I'll save this. I think I'll save this for next week's show or something. It was going to be this week's show until the Amy Miscavige stuff popped up, so we turned that into the show instead. Okay, yeah, you guys are awesome here. Let me tell you a couple. Oh yeah, I was going to tell you about the podcast. 2 hours tomorrow with Anthony Magnabosco. Okay, who's Anthony Magnabosco? He is an advocate and researcher and proponent of street epistemology, a very bizarre name for one of the best, most rational methods to bridge the divides, to talk to people about their beliefs, their ideas, their most closely held ideas, and get them to open up about them and start taking them apart without in any way getting into arguments or hostility or frustration or gnashing your teeth about arguing with this person. You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to go anywhere near any of that. You can do what's called street epistemology, and we talk about this. We even, for the first time, he demonstrates it by doing it on me. We really did a little street epistemology deal where he took up an idea, a claim that I have that I believe is true, and we took it apart so you can see it for yourself. But we talked about a lot of stuff in this podcast having to do with thought and belief and changing ideas and beliefs. And this is important stuff, so I hope you guys will check this out. And also, we talked about cult interventions and how they're done. If you guys are curious about any of that, that's in there. So I really hope you guys will check out that podcast tomorrow. It drops at midnight. And then it will be definitely, without question, this week, it will be a pre-recorded Q&A show. I will be doing that tomorrow. Have to. So it will not be a live show on Sunday. And then you'll have your After Scientology Straight Up and Vertical with Tony Ortega on Monday. So lots and lots and lots of content for you guys. I know it's hard to keep up with all of it, especially with everybody else doing stuff too. But I really hope you'll check this stuff out. I am really excited about this, about moving in this direction of really taking on and discussing and breaking down other cultic activity that goes on in the world beyond the world of Scientology. Now, let's go ahead and do our critical thinking card of the week. This is a good one. This is a good one. All of these are good, but this one, I see this all the time. This is a cognitive bias, which means this is a way you can see information and slant it. Yeah, I don't want to slant this stuff. Framing effect, okay? Framing effect. You allow yourself to be unduly influenced by context and delivery. No one likes to think of themselves as easily manipulated. Obviously, nobody wants to think that way. However, it's only when we have the intellectual humility to accept the fact that we can be influenced that we can limit how much we actually are. Try to be mindful of how things are being framed or what's being left out. Today was an example of that. So I hope you guys will check. Give this some consideration in your thinking, in your day-to-day, how you accept information. We also talk about that in the podcast, by the way. So it was a lot of fun. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Thank you very much for your support and for coming by and watching. I always appreciate it. If you can, support the channel monetarily. It makes a difference. And, you know, it's always helpful to me producing more content to have all that. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. And with that, bye-bye.